Well, hello. We're live. Um, Hoping a few folks will show up. Thanks, Sasha, for checking in, and Anne as well. Great to see you guys. Thank you. Um, all right, I'm just going to get right into this today. I'll start by saying thanks for all the shares that I'm seeing. More and more people are watching, and that's really great. I do appreciate you sharing these links with your friends and other artists. Really appreciate it. And I appreciate the thumbs up too whenever you see something that you like. That encourages me. So I can keep going. I can't believe this is like number 29 of these live streams. I never thought that I would do so many, and well, it hasn't been a short period of time. I mean, that's almost 30 weeks. But anyhow, here we are, and there's always something really interesting to talk about and things to show you guys. And I want to do a couple of different things today that I've mentioned a couple of them in the past, but I want to introduce another way of painting today as well. Carl, great to see you here. Thanks for showing. Um, all right, a couple of things. Today I'm working, I actually have these plastic gloves. I don't know if they're actually made of vinyl. And I don't usually do that. I like to work with my bare hands. But today I'm working with some flake white, actually Williamsburg flake white, which is a lead paint, a lead based paint. And if you're working with lead, then you should be very careful because it is poisonous. So safety is an important thing. You know, a lot of the colors that we use are dangerous. Cadmiums and cobalts and so on. They're not good to really get onto your hands or ingest by mistake, of course. Um, and lead is known to be very dangerous, but it's a beautiful paint to work with. So I'm going to do it's not something I usually use, but I just thought I would try a little bit of that today. Uh, Most of us, hi Ina, nice to see you. Most of us have old paintings kicking around. You know, ones that we've sort of looked at for a while and thought, there's something there that I like. Um, I want, I don't want to throw it away, or I don't want to obliterate it, or I'm not sure. There's just something in the painting that I like. Maybe it's the colors, maybe it's the composition, maybe it's the subject matter. It doesn't matter. I'm not a big fan of just getting rid of my paintings, and maybe that's a problem because I literally have hundreds of paintings that are, well, sitting in storage in a lot of cases. I don't even have them in my studio right now. So I have a lot of paintings that I think I've kept because either there's something in it that I wanted to try over top of it, or I wanted to revisit. Maybe it's a subject matter. Maybe it's a theme that I was working on and I never really completed it. It's okay to have work. Well, it's okay to have unfinished works. I'm sure that a lot of you have unfinished works. Anyone who's painting on a regular basis usually has work around that they either lost interest in, or they just thought, I'm not in the mood. I don't feel like it. It's not what I wanted. It's not going in the right direction. But there's nothing wrong with hanging on to that and looking at it again later, even if it's just for reusing the canvas. Because why throw it away? You know, if you really didn't want to work on an older surface, if it's canvas, it's on a stretcher. You could take it off the stretcher. You could turn it over, and you could stretch it again the other way. If I'm all for saving things instead of throwing them away. Maybe that's a problem. I don't know. But even on the back of canvas board, I've gessoed the back of canvas board and painted over that as well. There was an artist that I worked with many years ago, and he was a watercolor artist, and I went out painting with him, and he used to use like a 300-pound watercolor paper, which is a very heavy watercolor painter and very good quality. And if he did a painting on one side and didn't like it, he would turn it over and use the other side, at least to try that again. So people who bought his work sometimes ended up with two paintings, one on each side of the watercolor paper. So I'm not a big fan of throwing things away. Again, we pay money for these things, and if we can reutilize them or repurpose them in some way, that's great. Baron, great to see you. Yeah, flake white. Yeah, it's a good dryer too. So I've pre-mixed a bunch of colors. I'm not going to get into all the different colors that I've used. Some of them are a little unusual. Like I've got a magenta, for example, and I've got a cadmium orange, which is something that I don't usually use. And I even have a Viridian in here, which is an old Holland Viridian. But I pre-mixed things, and I actually took the image that I did a couple of weeks back, and you'll recognize it if you've been watching when it comes up. And I've let it dry thoroughly. However, there were some areas that weren't really dry. So I took a palette knife and I really scraped into the paint that was loose or hadn't dried properly. Then I went over that with some thinner to get rid of all of the anything that was wet anywhere. Because it's not good to paint over wet paint unless you're painting in a thicker way. If I paint thin over thick, then that creates a problem. That creates cracking and so on. And just to be sure that it was dry underneath and I have a good surface to work to, I took Elkid medium, this stuff, the Liquin Original, which is an Elkid, and I used that over top of the painting that was there in a thin layer, just to kind of pull it all together and let it dry thoroughly so that I have a surface that I know is going to be stable, and what is underneath is also going to be stable. So if you're considering or thinking about whether you want your paintings to last or not, if you do a good painting, of course you want it to last. I think that's probably sensible. There are painters who have done paintings, and Norman Rockwell, if you know his illustrations or his Saturday Evening Post covers, he said, I believe in his book, My Life as an Illustrator, I think that's what it's called, Norman Rockwell, My Life as an Illustrator. It's an autobiography. And he said, I can't guarantee my paintings because I've tried so many different things, they might actually explode. So it's good to have a working method that keeps your paintings lasting at least until maybe 100 years after you die or something like that. Anyhow, I'm going to take this image that I wasn't, it's okay. There's something there that I like about it compositionally. I thought that it had possibilities. But then what I did was I took a photograph of that and I took it into Procreate. And if any of you know Procreate, it's a program, an app that you can use on an iPad or on your computer. I guess actually it's probably best on an iPad. And with a stylus, I just started to work different colors and different compositions over top of it. And I'm going to attempt to paint one of the versions that I came up with when I was working in Procreate. So this is going to be a fairly graphic and almost an abstract feeling. I know I've mentioned William Ray's name in the past, and I just recently saw almost an hour-long program. I think it's called Vision X or something like this. It was a program that was online, and it was interesting to see some of his thoughts and his ideas around abstraction. Because abstraction is one of those things that is a big question. How far do you take something away from what it might look like? And William Ray has overpainted some of his older paintings, and they're really beautiful. He's simplified them to a point where they become in some cases almost completely abstract. In fact, I think some of them are completely abstract. But if you start with a structure underneath, it kind of gives you a direction to go. It gives you some shapes and some values and some spaces that you can work with, and that gives you a direction. And it's always good to have something, somewhat of a puzzle to figure out, if that makes any sense. Every time we look at something to paint, it's a puzzle. You know, what am I going to do with that? How do I best describe what is in front of me? So sometimes we'll do something like squinting, or we'll do a value study, for example, just to see what are my lights and my medium grays and my dark spots. So those kinds of things give you direction, and they add more substance and solidity to your work. So when you're painting, overpainting, something that you've done before, you also have the advantage of a paint that's built up a little bit, and you have some interesting textures that come out of it. And I'm going to even use, I went out and bought these tiny little mini rollers, they're just like this. I know Stefan's used these in the past. And I just thought, well, I'm going to give this a try, because it looks like a lot of fun. And what I want to do is fairly straight edge. So let's take it away. I'm going to I'll show you a couple of different techniques that I like to use, and we'll see where we go. Thanks, Rita, for showing up. It's great to see you guys. All right, let me just pull this over here. So some of you may recognize this image, minus these areas here, which you can see are kind of chunky and funny looking, but that was still wet. Those areas were still wet. That color hadn't dried properly. So I really scraped it down, got rid of anything that was still wet underneath, so I have a surface that I can work to. And sometimes those textures, they actually help the image as we go. I do want to change my composition. I find that when I look at this here, it's not strong enough to create this kind of shadow area here. And again, I'm working towards abstraction. I don't know what this is going to turn out like. I have no idea what this is going to look like. I've done something in Procreate that I'm going to try and follow. Let's see where it goes. Now, it could work in this case from light to dark or dark to light. I already have some shapes that are working here. But what I'm going to do is just start with a brush, get a little bit of color down, and try and make this composition work as best I can. I'm going to give this a fairly dry application of paint. I'm not adding a whole bunch of medium into this. So I'm just going to start up here, and I'm looking at my reference, and I've got an area that comes down about like so on this left side. And again, I've pre-mixed these colors, so it makes it easier for me. I don't have to go, mixing a bunch of stuff up as I'm talking to you guys. Maybe it's not a bad idea to mix things up as I'm talking, because then it gives me time to look at the image and discuss what it is I'm trying to do. But I like having the fresh paint ready, and in the process of preparing things ahead of time, I'm looking to see what might or what might not work compositionally. I don't mind some of the colors that I see underneath sometimes coming through. Sometimes that's very helpful. This is an ultramarine, by the way. And again, I'm working with some lead paint here with some flake white. So it goes on, it's actually quite nice. It's a buttery feel. And going on dry like this, I like the texture, the feel of the brush. I should mention, by the way, which I've been doing recently, that if for whatever reason I cut out, you can't see me anymore, you can't hear me anymore, well, that's because my phone just went on wherever it goes. So I'm hoping I'll actually make it through a whole session without that cutting out for once. But I'll come back to you if for some reason it does. So I'm just creating large shapes right now and values. That's what's happening. I'm going to go into a little darker color. This is almost straight ultramarine at this stage, and just jam in a couple of other colors here just to create some interest in these larger, duller areas. Whenever you have large areas to contend with like this, it's nice to break it up with texture of some kind or a change in color just to create a little more interest. And of course, when you go over one color that's down already, another color on top will harmonize with it because you've mixed it in. I've tried to work a composition out, and again, you can't see it because it's my reference. It may change dramatically before I'm done. I mean, it's okay to change your mind as you go, because I'll look at this and get back from it. And I'm going to bring another little bit of a darker color up here, which is a little bit warmer. I've got cool color going on right now. This will warm this up a bit right through here into that corner, maybe down in here. And I'm going to go back with more of the blue because I think that was just a little too much. Trying to keep my brush work fairly straightforward, fairly simple. I don't want to get too much information going in the shadow areas. I just want to keep the color nice and clean. And I'm going to try, if I can, to get another brush going just to keep things a little fresh. Now this is going to be interesting. I'm going to use a little roller here before I use my other brush. And I want to try something. Let's see how this goes. Hello, Terra Nova. And Heike, nice to see you. All the way from the Czech Republic. If anyone is here from different countries, it's really nice to let us know where you're coming in from, because that's one of the amazing things we have with the technology these days. And it's kind of fun for us to know where you're coming from. So now I'm using a roller, and I know this is not very conventional, but who says you have to be conventional? Like, you don't have to do it a certain way just because in the past you did it, one way. Don't be afraid to change things up, because that sometimes creates some nice textures and some interesting techniques that you hadn't thought of before. I'm going to get another brush out here. I want to simplify some of the colors that I see going on. So these were buildings, obviously, before, but I'm more interested in making it look like an abstract. But in the end, truth be known, this may end up looking like buildings. We'll see what happens. I don't know. As you can see, you get these nice textures that happen, that come through from the colors that are underneath. And I do like that. Sometimes you can leave colors that were there already. They kind of peek through. It's almost like a ghosting of an image. And I want to get rid of that dark spot there. Again, I'm really trying to think about composition to make it a little more interesting. Because I put some liquid down over all of this, it gives me a smooth surface to work with. And if I want, I can always wipe the color away and get back to what was underneath there. There's nothing wrong with that either. I'm kind of working from background to foreground in this. See folks from Germany here, of course. It's great. Ruhrpott. I'm probably saying that wrong, Sasha. Ruhrpott. If I could have an interactive thing where I could hear you guys, that would be great. Then you can correct my pronunciation. I just want to mention, it has nothing to do with art, but maybe it has to do something with achievement that Canada's done so nicely in the Olympics. It's a controversial subject having the Olympics going while all of this COVID thing is around. But anyhow, so the ladies won gold today, and in soccer or football, depending what you want to call it. So we're very proud to see those kind of achievements. And you know, when you set goals, just to relate it to art, you achieve your goals incrementally. It takes a lot of work and a lot of practice to make good painting. It really does. So be patient with yourself. And using liquid isn't quite the same as oiling out. You could potentially use it for oiling out if you wanted to. You could cover the entire surface with liquid and then paint into it. But liquid is very fast drying, and it gets tacky very quickly. So unless you're really doing an alla prima, say you really want something to dry in a hurry on location, for example, if you were outdoors, I probably wouldn't use it straight over the entire canvas. But you can use liquid for creating beautiful glazes, which is something I like to do sometimes. So you can add a little bit of color into it and go over the whole area with one color, and that really makes things pop. Okay, this is going to be interesting. Let's see how this color works up against these things now. You can see I'm not painting traditional colors here. And again, this is a big, I have to say, William Ray's work, W-R-A-Y, if you don't know his work, has really made me think, it's okay. You can change up colors and you can do what you want to. And if you don't like it, well, you paint over it if you want to, or you let it dry and paint over all of this again. So there's one painting that I've been working on. I don't have it with me, but I have painted over the same painting for the better part of 25 years now. It's a pretty thick paint by now. And all it is like a couple of men in a boat. I mean, it's just the simplest image with the moon behind them, huge moon. And I've never resolved it. I've never, been able to, I haven't been happy with it, but there's something in it that I like, just the composition, I guess. And when I find it again, maybe I'll drag it out and use it as a demo. So I've got some bizarre color going here. I want to keep things harmonizing. So I'm going to go over this whole area with this kind of pinky color, and I'll go into it with more color on top afterwards. I like some of the textures that are happening quite naturally there. It feels nice. This, in some ways, would be easier to do with acrylic, by the way. So if you're an acrylic painter, it dries super quick. And especially when it's a flat treatment like this, you can build layers very quickly. And acrylic can be a very nice medium to work with. I've just been using oil a lot because I prefer the possibility of removing things and the flexibility of it. So it's really a personal choice. You probably wonder what I'm doing right now, but because I had done something in Procreate to see what that would look like, I'm following kind of a design that I had going just to see how it works out. And again, can change your mind as you go. Anytime. It's all allowed. This is probably more about color and abstraction than anything else. Okay. I want to get into some more darks to punch this up a bit. It's a lot of intense color going on my palette, so which I like. I'm going to go into these areas below. I want to simplify these areas. I'm going to show you a technique, by the way. This is probably a good time to show you this. I know if I've brought this up in the past, but there are a couple of tools that really come in handy. For example, this paint scraper comes in very handy. When I'm trying to paint straight edges and keep them clean, I'll put a scraper like this against the edge and just paint up to that. And I get nice, clean edges, just using my brush this way. Gives me a lot of control where I want to have some straight edges. It's very, very handy. And of course, you just clean off your scraper, your paint scraper afterwards, a little bit of medium, clean it off in paper towel, and you can paint any color you want that way. It's a quick solution to getting straight edges going. Thanks for showing up, Jerry. Glad you're enjoying this. Really, really nice to see you here. Thanks all of you for participating in this. It makes me want to keep doing this when people show and they like it. So now I've got this darker color underneath and some very nice texture that just happens by mistake. And I love the by the mistake stuff because it gives a feeling, a natural feeling, instead of everything being contrived and always worked out all the time. And it leads you to this idea of being somewhat intuitive in your process. Just letting it happen. If you like the shape, you leave it. If you don't like the shape, you get rid of it later. When I'm done, I want to get rid of all the noise. And when I say noise, all the little stuff that just it's not very important. There's a new brush that I bought today. I have a problem with art supplies. If you've watched me before, I've talked about it. I can't resist buying art supplies. Every time I go to an art store, it's like, oh, look at that brush. That might work better than my old ones. And of course, that's just not true. So I end up with, I think I've got about 1,000 brushes right now. It's ridiculous. I should just open my own art store and sell brushes someday. Or would just maybe give them to people who don't have brushes. Okay, so I'm just trying to build big shapes here. I'm going to take that. I kind of like the little angle on that shape right there. So I'm going to leave it. Don't ask me why I'm doing this. This really is, like, these shapes are an intuitive process. I'm just building in shapes that I think might be interesting, that take your eye to a focal area. And I have a focal point in mind, which is going to be in this area right here when I'm done, hopefully. Hi, Bonnie. I still haven't tried the dry flower yet. That's something I need to do. I'm not sure how to paint with a dried flower, so I'll have to give that a try sometime. Maybe it doesn't need to be a big one. I don't know. Maybe you can private message me about it. Let me know how I can use a dried flower. You paint the flower and then stick it onto something and then pull it off again. That would leave some interesting textures. Okay. I'm going to grab another brush here. Dried flower might be cheaper than a brush, for sure. Okay. I want to get some rich darks into the near the focal point area here. And so that's about as dark as I'm going. By the way, I'm not using black anywhere. For those of you who know anything about Impressionism, of course the Impressionists didn't use black, at least not all of them. Monet wouldn't use black. So this is a mixture of actually a Rublev Cypress Umber Dark and an ultramarine blue. So you can get some rich darks without actually going to black. I have no problem with painting with black, by the way. It's not an issue. If you're going to paint with black, it's often a good idea to put some color into it so that it doesn't create sort of a dead color in your painting. Because black can really flatten things out. Just having a little bit of color, like I can take just a touch of a blue and drop that into these darker areas and with a light touch, and that brings just a little bit of life into those darker areas. So that's something to think about. Watercolor is better with dried flowers. I'll have to give that a try. Really will. Because I like painting with watercolor too. I'm trying to stay somewhat true to the image that I created in Procreate. At the same time, leaving myself open to the idea of change and putting things in that will work kind of on the fly here. Now, as flat as these areas are, you can also create some transition. You know, let the brush do a little bit of the transitional stuff. Drag color up so that there are some softer areas, that they're not all hard edges everywhere. Hard edges are, well, they get too much attention. That's what happens. So you want to keep those hard edges, as I've mentioned in the past, towards a focal point or the focal area. And the focal area is where you want people to be looking, because we look at sharp edges. Carl, is black warm or cold? So it depends on the black. If you use ivory black, for example, it's quite cool. It's a very bluish black. If you were to use a lamp black, you would find that that is a lot warmer. So, and, you know, color temperature, it's like one of those, Stefan and I get going back and forth all the time on color temperature. What is warm and what is cool, and we have our arguments about it. And we're both right, actually, in a way. Because it depends what colors are beside it. So a color can appear very cool if you have warm colors beside it. And if you have, you know, you can appear very cool if you have warm colors beside it. So it's just like, depending on the colors that are next to it. If you surround yellow ochre, for example, with a complement color of violet, even though yellow ochre is, believe it or not, is a cool color, like in its nature, and if you want proof of that, you can just add white to it and ask yourself, you know, would I paint a sunset with that? If you put a violet around a yellow ochre, it makes it appear much warmer. So that's just It's a relationship of one to another. That's what it is. Okay, I'm going to grab, I need a couple of little detail areas here. See just what happens if I, again, I'm going to bring in this paint scraper, and I'm just going to paint a color across that. And I'm not sure if I'm very crazy about that. Maybe I'm going to go with a palette knife for the one that's next to it. Yeah, I'd like to do some watercolor with you guys at some point as well. It's a lot of fun to do it. So the temperature always depends on the environment. Actually, that's really true, Carl. Yeah, it really does. There are some general rules that you can follow. If you have warm light, you're going to have cooler shadows. If you have cool light, you're going to have warmer shadows. And when I say that, it's because they're relative to each other. So if you want to really see what that looks like, go and look on Google Images at snow scenes on a sunny day where you've got long shadows, and you'll see that the shadows are very cool, almost towards violet, and the color of the snow in the light is very warm. So that's a good place to look to sort of see that relationship. It's very dramatic, but you can see it in a lot of things. If you look at the light that's coming through your window, wherever you are right now, if it's warm light, if you have some white surfaces, if it's warm light, you're going to see the difference between the warm and the cool in the shadow areas. That's where you look. Okay. Right now I'm sort of getting fiddly with a few little details, but I just want to get something in here that holds that area. And I also want to clean the inside of this area up a bit. So I'm going to get a smaller brush, and ideally a flat brush. And I'm going to pull that pink color that I had before into here. So I have a bit of a rhythm happening here between two things. I don't want to get too fussy. Again, when I start getting this fussy, I start thinking, okay, you get, kind of pedantic, and I stop having fun at that stage. So it's important to keep the brush moving around. You can always get back to things and correct them later when you need to. When I look at this, I sort of feel like this is like another building behind here or something, and I can drag a little bit of that light from there into this area. And just let that soften down. Gives me an area of interest. I have no idea what this is about. I'm going to kill that red right up against there. Let a little spot of red show there. All right. Sasha, you got the details down for black. Thanks. Appreciate that. Okay. I'd like to bring more of this color down into the foreground a little bit here, and I do want to clean this edge up. So I've got this is one of my new brushes today, and it's already losing hair. It's like me. It's losing hair. So sometimes when I Okay. Hopefully I got back in good time and you guys can still hear me. Sorry about that. My phone always goes for one. I don't know why. I'm hoping you can hear me okay still. Let me know if you can't. It's almost like it has a timeout on it or something. I don't know why it keeps doing that. More of a painter than a technician, I think. It's very disconcerting. All right, I sort of feel like I need a hit of blue over here just to kind of pick it up on the other side. So, let me grab another brush. I'm using more brushes than I usually do. Maybe that's good. All right. I'll take that a little higher, right up in there. I kind of like that, but it's so close to the edge that it's a little distracting. So I'm going to knock that down just a little. But I kind of like that transition there that comes up into the blue. And I think I want to bring that green down a little more here. So this is where it starts getting fun for me, because now I'm not following the reference that I have as much. I am basically just trying to get colors that look interesting against each other. Trying to find relationships of colors to each other. I think I might even bring a little bit of that blue into this corner right here. And I mixed up a pretty interesting violet before. Okay, I'm going to do this. I want to try bringing in the roller again. I'm going to really take a bunch of paint off of it. Just want to lighten this a little before I go into another color underneath that. And the roller is a way of really controlling your color in an area, because you can hit it very lightly. I'm actually trying to switch up the roller. There we go. And it wouldn't come off for me. So let's see if I can get a fresh one on here and get fresh color going in. Okay. Now I've managed to get a bunch of paint all over my hand, or all over my glove. I'm very thankful that I had a glove on. And I'm just going to grab another glove here before I go to this next stage. So again, I don't want to get any paint on my hands today. I'm working with this lead white, so. Okay. Now I want to use a roller with some violet that I've got here. So I have to dip it in, I'm dipping a roller into the violet, and then I want to spread it so that I have some control. And I want to bring that in here. Just using the corner of the roller, I can get some control that way. And get some nice clean edges. I like that. It's okay. Okay, I'm going to go back into some other color, a little heavier on the color side now. And this is starting to become more and more abstract, I think. That violet color that I had for down here, I want to see what happens if I take it up here. Just darken the sky down a little. One of the advantages of working over leftover paint, of course, is that you've got these textures that happen quite naturally. And I've got like a yellow and a violet, which are neutralizing each other a little bit. And that creates something interesting, but I think I could use a little more. I think it needs to be a little stronger in that sky. Let's see what happens if I bring in a little more of this in a more liquid form. This might work or not. We'll see. Of course, there's wet paint underneath and it picks up and you get interesting texture. Some interesting things happening here, kind of like that. I wouldn't mind pushing that a little further. So we have that sense of light coming through here. And maybe we have that light picking up down through these areas as well. Yeah, Gerhard Richter's squeegee. It's probably worth something these days. He could probably sell it. One of the things I like about Richter's work is that there are a lot of things I like about his work. He's experimented a lot, and he's gone from fairly figurative things to abstraction. And I didn't understand abstraction for the longest time. I didn't think it was worthy of attention. But the more I paint, the more I understand that everything that we look at is abstraction. It's all a big puzzle. And then as we get back from it and see one shape against another, we start to understand the relationship of one shape against the other, which gives us the idea of, well, we organize what we see in our minds and we recognize what we're looking at. So I think I've talked about this before, but everything we look at is abstract. And our brain organizes those shapes to a point where they become recognizable so that we are safe, because we're always looking to be safe. So it's a very primal instinct. Okay. Kind of liking the way some of these pinks are happening. I'm going to pull that over a little more. And now I want to bring in a little stronger color. I'm mixing a color I really don't like here. I'll just see what happens when I put it in. Okay, it's in shadow, so it's okay. Looking for rhythms also. That's important. Thanks, Terra Nova. Yeah, I think the violet helps. It just brings it into something about violet. Is one of my students pointed out to me. It seems to be one of my favorite colors. There's an idea of favorite color, because it's sort of warm and cool at the same time. If that makes any sense. It's a very royal kind of color. Now I'm starting to mix up color that isn't on my, when I say isn't on my palette, it's not pre-mixed color. I'm using colors that are already on my palette, and I'm trying to create relationships of those colors with each other so that there's some subtle areas. It doesn't have to be smack right in your face all the time. It's okay to vary things up, you know. It's that variety that makes a painting look more interesting, in my opinion. And there's a lot of suggested detail. There's not a lot of detail here. It's just suggested. Oh, you're right, Carl. Every picture is abstracted from reality because it's two-dimensional. I also say that every painting is a sculpture, which is three-dimensional, because we're creating a surface that isn't, that's a very flat sculpture. Let's put it that way. But we are essentially working with a two-dimensional representation of the three-dimensional objects in front of us. And of course, with abstraction, a lot of it has to do with color relationship, composition, harmony of color, perhaps. So this is kind of the playground. This is, when you get into abstraction, you can sort of like being the playground. You can just play until you feel like you've got something that's working, and then hopefully leave it alone before you destroy it. I do want to hit some of the reds a little stronger too. Before I do, I'm just going to go over a couple of areas here. These little red spots here, I kind of like them. I prefer odd numbers to even numbers. So I'm going to get rid of this one here. And I think I'm going to get rid of this one over here too. I'm going to hit this with a lighter blue right there. I still haven't used any pure white anywhere because we really don't see that in nature much. But I may chunk in a little bit of bright white at the end, we'll see. I'm going to go in with an orange now. That's that cadmium orange, which, by the way, is something that you can't mix from cadmium red and cadmium yellow. I just thought if you want to make a cadmium orange, you just take cadmium red and cadmium yellow, and there you go, bingo. But in fact, cadmium orange is its own color, and it's very intense. And as soon as you mix two colors together, they're not as intense. So cadmium orange I discovered in an art class that I took with Roberto Rosenman. If you ever want to look him up, he paints very realistic and very beautiful paintings. Roberto Rosenman. And he proved to me that you actually can't mix up a cadmium orange out of cadmium red and cadmium yellow. Okay, so something is not working in here. I either have to have the values, if I squint at this, the values of the sky and this, whatever shape that is, if it's a building, let's say, are too similar to each other, and they're complement colors, so they're sort of fighting against each other. So I really do want to create either a greater contrast of color temperature or value. And, you know, if the values are right in a painting, then the painting is usually more successful. I'm going to try something here. I'm just going to take some paper towel. May just end up making a great big mess of this, by the way, so we'll see what happens. Just going to take some paper towel with some thinner on it, and I'm just going to wipe this up here, and just kind of lighten that up. It's already better, even just with that, because there's more interest in that. So this is the stuff that underneath I had scraped away, and now it's giving me the sense of clouds that were there. So sometimes while you're trying to fix things or, you know, change things, you destroy what's there, and it ends up being something more interesting on its own without even trying. So I kind of like what I'm seeing there. It's already better than it was. And because I happen to have some here this time, I'm going to use Q-tips as well. I still haven't brought out the squeegee, but I'm going to use Q-tips just to pull some of those shapes up by taking color off. I would never make those kind of shapes for clouds because my clouds would look too contrived. I would want to paint them like an illustrator. But because those shapes are there that are underneath, and they're somewhat abstract, they work, and I want to leave them alone. So maybe I've just found a new way of creating clouds. Maybe I haven't found a new way and other people are doing it already, but new for me, let's say. So this is the accidental stuff that happens when you paint this way. It can be really fun, totally unintentional, and yet it can still work. All right, just because it's there, and I'm going to start to play with, I'm going to take this color that I see here and pop it in behind there. This is going to look like bubble gum when I'm done. Now there's enough change of color, intensity of color here. So that sky's starting to pull together a little better. I'm going to take it into a little bit of blue just to see what that looks like. So I've got like a blue, a pinky bluey kind of color going in here. Now, I've lost that feeling of light that was coming through over there before in order to play with these clouds. So sometimes you lose something that's working to try and gain something else that works. Is it better? I don't know. Again, they're very close in value, those two colors. So I'm going to attempt to bring in a little darker color, more like that one there, into this corner so this stands out against it more. Maybe I can even bring just a touch of green into that, just to darken the value down. Maybe it'll pick up that green there. If I'm going to do that, commit to it, then do it. Again, because it's abstract, I'm not trying to create a scene, although it kind of looks like a scene. I can do this kind of stuff just because I can, right? No one's saying you can't do that. You're the one who gets to choose. But I want to connect them now. So let's just see what happens. I'm really getting away from my original reference that I had, so that's okay. Let your intuition tell you what you need to do. And now as I look at it, I'm thinking I should just join those big green shapes, and maybe that'll be stronger all the way through. So let's just do that. In the process of all of this, of course, I may end up destroying this. It's okay. It may just be an underpainting for another painting. It's a little bit about, like what I did in a stream not long ago, about just pushing paint around until it looks right. And when you're abstracting things, you can certainly play and just let it happen. It's definitely stronger. So painting is the sum of its destruction. I like that too. Right, Carl. So now we're getting into more subtle value changes in these areas, which I think you can get away with. It's better. And this makes all of that stronger now, the values that are happening here. Something I like to do is drag one color into another just to soften areas that are less important. So you can do this kind of thing. And you can see what happens just with that. It ties things together and creates a sense of a rhythm, if that makes any sense. even in areas like this, where you've got that strong edge, I can go in and just soften that so that there's some kind of relationship between these two colors. This is like an entry point from one color to another. I'm going to do the same thing right here. Just let that drag down just a little there so that we have a softening of the edges that are really crisp right there, and allows us to get into this painting more. You can drag it up or down, doesn't matter. And, you know, sort of hit it and leave it, if that's possible. Okay, had this nice little punch of blue. You want to let certain colors dominate, generally. You know, that holds a painting together better. But sometimes there's like this little surprise color that can happen. And I like that blue when it happened there. I want to try and pick that up somewhere else. And I'm thinking maybe along the edge of some of these shapes here. Blues connected with blues. We've got the horizontal and the vertical happening here. And again, creating a bit of a rhythm. I want to get a real shot of that pink going in here somewhere too, but maybe closer to the focal area. It's hot orange colors that are happening. Now I'm going to try, I'm curious more than anything to see if this white will help anything. So I'm going to go in here and just bring in some white, which takes me towards a focal area right there. And towards the focal area, you can have more intense colors that pop up. And find their way into this zone. So again, just taking a palette knife, dragging it down. Let's see what happens when I do this. Yeah. Again, it's picking up the textures that I'm seeing in here. Hey, Stefan, great to see you. Thanks for showing up. I have no idea what I'm doing here today. Well, sort of do. I mean, I know what I'm trying to do, but I'm having fun. Just flying by the seat of my pants, as they say. I want to pick up a little more in these cloud kind of shapes here, if that's what they are. And a very, very light yellow. I want to hit this area here. Okay. I'm going to go a little more into this green that I like here and just pull this up a little more so we have a real definition of value difference going on against this edge, against the background. And try to deal with areas that are a little confusing, like that area right there. Now I'm going to take a little bit of the blue that I have going there and see if I can bring it in a little over here. Let's see what happens. Just to lighten that section up a touch and maybe down to this corner so that it defines it better. The old paint roller technique. All right. Now I've got funny things happening in here. I don't know where all those blues picked up from. Sometimes you see colors, they just seem to somehow or other magically appear without you realizing you put them there. I don't know how that happens. Now I'm very tempted to see what happens when I pull a color away again. I want to try something here. Again, I don't want to get too much detail going. I want to keep things the shape simple and keep them bold. But at the same time, because there's so much interesting texture underneath this, I also want to take advantage of it. So I'm just taking a wet brush here with no paint on it at all. And I want to just pull away a bit of light. I don't know if this is going to work or not. I'm just going to pull away some of this color here and let the color that was underneath show through. There was a yellow there before. It's an ochre kind of color. And let some of that light get into that area. I'm going to take some paper towel, pull off even a little more. Sometimes these are the things that I'll do and then later look at it and just kill it again because it's not working. Or I'll leave it, look at it for a while, and say, well, maybe that's okay. I just wanted to bring a little more light into this area. And this is a bit of a boring zone right now, so I'm going to put something a little darker in there. And just because, put something on an angle to break the rhythm, taking our eye in this way. So it creates kind of an invisible X there. I'm glad you can relate, Phil. Yeah, the paint rollers You know, a handy tool, that's for sure. Thanks for showing up. Brush is wet with a Jerry. I was just using a thinner. I use like in Europe, some people call it a chaise oil, but it's just basically a paint thinner. Oh, I've got something happening here. Sorry. I'll be right with you. I forgot to plug in my iPad. So it's telling me I have a low battery. There we go. Yeah, all of those things that happen. Low battery. I want to bring some of that texture down through here. Now, you know, there's a big area here that's almost getting a little too much attention now because I've got all this texture that's happening. I put that in because this was a boring area, and now I've made that more interesting. So I either have to punch up that boring area here a little more with the dark, or I have to get rid of that texture. So this is always trying to balance the two against each other. You know, I always liken it to a classroom full of kids. The one that makes the most noise is the one that gets the attention, right? So it's when all the others are quiet. But when they're all screaming at the same time, then, you know, they all sound the same. And it's the same with a painting. You have to have some quiet areas, and you have to have areas that are a little noisier visually, if that makes any sense. And when you do that, you find the viewer is drawn more to it because there's more interest in one area, or a couple of areas, shall we say. Again, I hadn't planned on using white, but just going to pull the eye over here a little more. Let that be the focal area. It's the only white there is in the whole thing. These two areas right there. Pure white, that is. And again, it's lead white. So those of you who haven't been here from the beginning, make sure that you wear gloves. If you're using lead white, it's dangerous stuff. Thanks, Romeo. I don't even know if I have a style. Like, it's really funny because Romeo said he likes my painting style. And style is one of those things that is just a big question mark in my mind. I have no idea. People say they recognize my style, or, you know, they like a particular way, but I really don't know what it is. I keep trying different things all the time, and I think that that's fun and exciting for me. A little confusing for people who are looking for a very particular thing. Like sometimes the galleries, they want you to do one thing because it's easier for them to try and explain to their clientele what it is the artist does. But for me, art is something about exploring all the time and growing. And when you do that, of course, the different looks that you get from things change regularly. So, okay. I'm getting really close to being there, almost at the end here. I haven't tried cubism, Romeo. It'd be kind of fun to try. I sort of feel like all the best cubists have already done it, but you know, what the heck, why not? Who's to say we shouldn't try lots of different things while we're working, right? So it's quite okay. Sorry, I bumped my phone. It's quite okay to try anything that you want to try and see if you like it. And if you have a short attention span like me, then you keep trying all kinds of different things. And I find every time I try something different, I learn from it, hopefully. And eventually you can incorporate all of those things that you learn, again, hopefully, into your work so that it becomes more powerful somehow. This is very different from what I painted the last session. If any of you saw where I painted the building in the woods, it's very different from that. But this is fun. I am having fun doing this stuff. So when it's not fun, it shows in your brushstrokes. It shows like, you know what, you're just a machine producing the same old stuff over and over. So keep trying different things. I can't encourage that enough. Keep trying different things because you'll learn from it. Okay. The lighting is interesting here. When I show this on Facebook, I'll take a good photo of this. It looks quite different than what you're seeing on your screen because it's picking up on certain colors more than it is from what's in front of me here. All right. Okay, where are we? 321. I think that's about all I'm going to do on this. Can you hear me now? I just pulled the plug on that. I'm hoping that you can hear. Let me know if you can hear me. Thanks. Okay. No sound. Are you able to hear me? Can you hear me now? If you can't, okay, perfect. Thanks, guys. Appreciate. Okay. Samath, you had a question. Is it raw color you're using or any other liquid you dabble your brush in? What you use to clean your brush, water, or anything else? I'm working with oils, and the colors that I'm using are a mix of primary colors that I don't have a lot of different colors. I use a few primary colors. And if you watch some of my past live streams, you'll see I actually talk about some of the colors that I use. This is live stream number 29, if you can believe it. And so, go back and have a look at them if you want to. And maybe I'll get into some color stuff at some point, some more color stuff in the future. So that was fun for me today. I'm gonna stop now. That's what I was starting to say. I might do a little bit more work on it. I don't know, but I'll take a better photo of it and post it on Facebook. I really want to thank you again for showing up today. Please share this with anyone you think might be interested, with a warning that I disappear now and then, like the ghost artist that just disappears. You can't hear me sometimes, but I'm hoping you're still learning from what I'm sharing with you. It's a lot of fun to work this way. Uh, Live, I'm painting anyhow, so that's why I'm doing this. I'm painting and hoping, well, you can either watch the Olympics or you can watch me, and probably most people are watching the Olympics who are interested. Canada is doing really well right now, so a big shout out to us Canadians. The gold medals happening. Um, thank you again for showing up. Please share with others and a thumbs up. I really appreciate it. I'm getting close to the 500 subscription point, and somebody's going to end up with a free painting or a free piece of artwork of some kind. Thanks, Anne. Thanks, Stefan. I'm glad you like my painting. Thanks, Sasha. Thank you so much, everyone who showed up. I do really makes me happy to know that you're tuning in, and it encourages me to keep doing this. So be well, be safe, have a great weekend, and happy painting. We'll see you next Friday. Take it easy. Thanks, Heike. Thank you. We'll see you next time. Ciao. Bye-bye.